This video is sponsored by CyberGhost VPN. France has big plans for its armed forces. 355,000 soldiers. Hundreds of new modern tanks. Brand new fighter jets. A world-class navy. France is gearing up massively.
Pour être libre dans ce monde, il faut être craint.
Il y a lieu de se demander si les troupes de Vladimir Poutine ne sont pas déjà dans notre pays. Je parle de vous et de vos troupes, Madame Le Pen.
L'avenir de l'Europe n'a pas à être tranché à Washington ou à Moscou.
Well, that's the idea. But is France, one of Europe's biggest powers, actually ready to fight? Especially with Russia pushing forward every day and peace talks seemingly off the table. This is the second video of our multi-part series on if European countries are ready for war. If you missed the first episode on Germany, check it out right here. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss your country's turn. So, back to France. And let's start with money. France spends about $65 billion a year on defense. That's 2.06% of its GDP, which is 9th worldwide, just behind Ukraine. Pretty impressive, right? Well, part of that is because pensions are tucked into the bill. Take those out, and the actual defense budget is closer to $47 billion, or 1.78% of GDP. Still, this is a lot for Europe, just not quite as impressive once you cut out the hidden extras. Now, France does want to spend more. It has promised to raise its defense spending to 5% of GDP within the next decade. That's a massive jump from today's $65 billion to around $158 billion. And if military spending stays the same for other countries, which of course it won't, France would move to the third biggest spender worldwide. But money isn't everything. So in this video, we're going to break it all down. We'll look at France's land power, manpower, air power, and naval strength, and see how it actually compares to its European allies. And then we can determine whether France is on track to become the dominant force in Europe. Let's start with France's land power. France doesn't actually have that many tanks for a major power, just 427 Leclercs, but about 200 of them are being upgraded. The new Leclerc XLRs will have better electronics, stronger protection, and better links with other units. Still, the numbers are modest. Poland already has over 700 tanks, aiming for about 1,800 by 2034, and Germany will have just over 300 by 2026. But France makes up for this with sheer numbers of other vehicles. Over 110,000 in total. Everything from troop carriers and infantry vehicles to trucks and command posts. That allows France to fight both big wars in Europe and long missions overseas like in Africa. Many of these vehicles are also being modernized. One example is the Serval, a light troop carrier. France plans 530 new Servals by 2031, giving its infantry a real boost. Artillery, though, is weaker. France's howitzers are respected and combat proven, but production is slow. And compared to the US or Russia, France just can't build enough of them quickly. But having tanks and vehicles is only part of the story. To survive a modern battlefield, you also need strong air defense. France's short-range system is the Mistral, a portable heat-seeking missile. Think of it as a guard dog. It can shoot down low-flying aircraft, helicopters, and even drones that get too close to French troops or bases. For medium-range protection, France still uses their Crotale NG. It's been around since the 90s and can shoot down planes, helicopters, and even some missiles. Not bad, but it is getting old. The replacement's already lined up, the VL-MICA NG. It's faster, more mobile, and has sharper targeting. And at the top layer sits the SAMP-T, better known as Mamba. It's France's big shield in the sky, built together with Italy, a European product. The system fires the Astar-30 missile, which can hit targets up to 120 kilometers away. France once planned for 12 of these batteries, but only 10 were ever built. Now, before we continue, let's pause for a moment to talk about something that affects all of us online: privacy. Whether you're reading the news or streaming your favorite TV shows, your activity is not as private as you might think. Internet providers, public Wi-Fi networks, and even the websites you visit can track what you're doing. And sometimes it's not just about privacy, but access. Just 2 weeks ago, our EU Made Simple livestream was only available in the United States due to a YouTube issue in Europe. Viewers with a VPN, like CyberGhost, could watch as normal, but everyone else was blocked. And that's why today's video is sponsored by CyberGhost VPN, trusted by millions worldwide and rated nearly perfect by its users. Simply select one of their over 100 locations before you browse to encrypt and reroute all of your traffic through their secure services. Your activity and data is protected, even from CyberGhost themselves. It also unlocks streaming libraries from other regions. For example, I love BBC's iPlayer, which is not available in Germany without a VPN like CyberGhost. It works on all major devices and operating systems: Windows, macOS, Android, or iOS, and you can protect up to 7 devices at the same time. Perfect for sharing with friends and family. So use the link in the description and get 84% off, which is only €2 per month. And with a money-back guarantee, getting CyberGhost is a no-brainer. Back to the video. Next up is the human side of the military: manpower. France has about 200,000 soldiers on active duty, plus 26,000 reservists. Not bad, but Paris wants more. By 2030, the goal is around 275,000 active troops and 80,000 reservists. France's army is built around 2 main combined arms divisions, known as Scorpion divisions. The first is the 1st Armored Division, based in Besançon. The second is the 3rd Division, recently brought back and on track to be fully operational by 2025 to 2026. And both of these divisions will field around 25,000 personnel. Now, let's break down their structure. And at first glance, they look pretty similar. But one of the brigades definitely stands out: the Franco-German Brigade. Established in 1989, it includes approximately 6,000 soldiers from both countries and can operate under NATO or EU command. It's a great example of European cooperation. But that's not all of the French armed forces. Apart from the 2 armored divisions, a large part of the troops are also organized into specialist groups. For example, the command of the Inter-Arms Combat School, which oversees combined arms training and doctrine development for the army. Or the command of the Force Training and Readiness Centers, which runs major training centers to prepare units for operations. And there's many more. And although these command centers are specialized, they contain many combat-ready troops, such as artillery or infantry regiments. One of France's most famous forces is the Foreign Legion, an elite hardcore unit made up of mostly non-French soldiers. It's tough to get in. The training is super brutal, and its initiation is legendary. Today, the Legion has more than 9,000 troops, and it plays a key role in France's overseas missions. It's also known for a unique tradition: French by spilled blood, which is a law that grants French citizenship to any legionnaire wounded in combat. Pretty badass. Lastly, France's broader reforms are deeply structural. Since 2023, the army has been transforming into a war-fighting army, aimed at deploying a 2-brigade division within 30 days by 2027. Next, let's move on to air power. France's air power rests on the Rafale, sleek, lethal, and combat-proven. It's one of Europe's most advanced fighter jets, built by Dassault and serving both Air Force and Navy. As of 2025, France fields 95 Rafales, and by 2035, that number should hit 264, giving France one of the largest fighter fleets in Europe, ahead of Germany's 232, but slightly behind Italy's 287. But the Air Force is more than just jets. France also operates 448 helicopters for transport, recon, and attack. It also has 137 transport aircraft, most made by Airbus and other European firms. France is actually also one of the few European countries with its own heavy airlift capacity. independent of the US. But France doesn't have any heavy bombers, as its long-range strike power relies on nuclear deterrence. But not everything is smooth. France, Germany, and Spain are clashing over the Future Combat Air System, a future European fighter jet due in 2040. Dassault wants to lead, claiming up to 80% of the next-gen fighter segment. Airbus, backed by Germany and Spain, says no, not if Berlin is footing the bill. France also wants to guard sensitive systems, especially nuclear-related tech, while Airbus argues for shared ownership. The dispute could push back the demonstrator flight planned for 2026 to 2027. And then there's drones. France is still playing catch-up on drones, but it's moving fast. Right now, it mainly has scout drones and systems to shoot enemy drones down. Bigger armed drones, like the AROC, are being built with billions in funding and should arrive later this decade. Next up, the pride of France, its navy. The French Navy is one of the most powerful maritime forces in Europe and a significant global actor. With 133 naval vessels and a total displacement of around 430,000 tons, France maintains a fleet capable of almost all operations, from coastal patrols to full-scale global deployments. At the center of this fleet is the Charles de Gaulle, Europe's only nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. It serves as a symbol of France's ability to project power far beyond its borders. Now let's break the fleet down by category. France has 11 destroyers, 11 frigates, and 5 corvettes, and 6 attack submarines. This is a much larger force than Germany's, or Italy's, and even the UK. But numbers aren't the whole story. What really sets France apart is where it sails. Thanks to its overseas territories in the Pacific, Indian Ocean, Caribbean, and South America, French ships aren't just tied to Europe. They're deployed on every ocean, every single day. And then comes the strategic heart, the nuclear submarines. France fields 4 Triumphant-class subs, each armed with ballistic missiles, carrying multiple nuclear warheads. One is always at sea, hidden and ready, ensuring that if France were ever attacked, it could strike back, no matter what. These submarines aren't just weapons, they're France's ultimate insurance policy. And that brings us to the 5th and final section, one you won't see in any other EU military deep dives. Why? Because no one else in the EU has it: nuclear weapons. France is one of just 9 nuclear powers worldwide, one of only 2 in Europe, and the EU's sole atomic power. Its arsenal stands at around 290 warheads. Not massive, but more than enough to guarantee deterrence against any attacker. France's nuclear force rests on 2 pillars. The first, as discussed before, are its 4 Triumphant-class submarines, each carrying missiles with multiple warheads. And second, the Rafale fighter jet, launched from land or the Charles de Gaulle. It carries just 1 warhead on a nuclear cruise missile, but that makes it super useful in regional or tactical crises where a submarine strike would be too much. France keeps full control of its arsenal, but has started talking with Germany and the UK about nuclear defense. And with the American umbrella looking shakier in the Trump era, France's deterrent is increasingly seen as Europe's last line of defense against Russia. Alright, we've been through the 5 main sections of the French military. So far, it's been pretty positive. But here's one massive problem: money. France is drowning in debt, over 110% of its GDP, and its deficit is almost double the EU's 3% limit. Right now, it spends about 2% of GDP on defense, but Paris wants to raise that to 5% by the end of the decade. And that would mean $158 billion a year. A very big jump. The problem is that France can't borrow like Germany, and it doesn't have spare cash in the budget. New ideas are floating around: a defense bond for citizens, more EU defense integration, or even joint borrowing. But nothing is concrete, and we've actually made a whole video on just this topic, so make sure you check it out right here. So while Paris talks about leading Europe's defense against Russia, the real question is, can France actually afford it? Here's what I think. France is the dominant EU military force, stronger than Germany, Spain, or Italy, and therefore it needs to step up and take a strong leadership role. But it should not do this alone. I say this in almost every military video. It makes no sense that all 27 EU countries are building their militaries separately. 27 procurement programs, 27 equipment catalogs, 27 command posts. In other words, 27 scattered armies. Structurally, financially, and strategically, this is a mess. Our adversaries like Putin act with one voice and one command. And if Europe wants real deterrence, we need to do the same. France, alongside a rearming Germany, could lead this effort. Spain is on board. Even Meloni in Italy has said similar things. With the 4 strongest EU powers leading, we could finally take the first steps toward a real army of Europeans. And we should definitely bring Ukraine in too. Their experience is invaluable, and Europe has a lot to learn from them. And the first steps might actually be forming with a coalition of the willing. And we made a whole video about this that you can watch here. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to check out CyberGhost VPN to protect your privacy today and unlock the freedom to watch anything you want anywhere in the world. Get up to 84% off, which is only €2 per month, with a link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe, and a very special shout out to all of our presidents: Jan Schalke, Christian Peter HVD, Daniel Unite Europe, Stefan Rashid, and Kiki Loksin.